Hi and welcome to today's video. Now I'm actually taking a slight detour from my usual content, and instead of a review I'm actually going to read a children's story entirely in rhyme which I wrote about 10 years ago called Tick the Red Tock. Now if you're here for the usual reviews, don't unsubscribe, it'll be business as usual on the next video, I promise. In the meantime, I'd love to get some feedback on the story and welcome all comments below, especially if you have children aged between 5 and 10 or you're a publisher who thinks there's potential in my narrative poem. I hope you like it. Well, let's get the environment sorted before I start. There was once an old house on a street near here, where no people had lived for many a year. Inside of the house, on the dusty hall floor, unopened letters lay piled by the door. Yet in the kitchen, made of polished dark wood, a grandfather clock very proudly stood. Unlike all around, it wore no dust or grime. It ticked and it tocked and it kept perfect time. But this beautiful clock hadn't always been so. It was broken and silent until not long ago. And then a strange little guest, not much bigger than a mouse, had chosen the old clock to become his new house. He worked on the clock for a day and a night until the pendulum swung and the face shone bright. He adored the sound of a grandfather clock, for his name was Tick and he was a Tock. Now, you may be unaware of the many kinds of Tocks. Black Tocks often found playing Scrabble with a fox. And have you ever wondered why you end up with odd socks? The others are worn as hats by the yellow spotted Tocks. Some Tocks live in the trees and others live under rocks, while blue Tocks love to swim in the chilly locks. And be careful of Tocks hiding when you open up a box. The cheeky little green ones like to give you nasty shocks. But this particular Tock was neither spotty nor blue. He wouldn't play Scrabble or go swimming with you. No, Tick was bright red and furry from head to toe, safe inside this clock as he had nowhere else to go. However, late one spring day, Tick opened the clock door and was surprised to find that no dust was left on the floor. The familiar old smell of spiders and mould had been replaced by peach with a hint of marigold. Boxes covered a table, with plenty more in the hall, and photographs now covered the once bare kitchen wall. Upon the shiny pictures, full of smiles and joy, stood a woman, a man, and a happy little boy. But no sooner had Tick had a good look around, his little ears were met with an unfamiliar sound. The front door unlocked and opened with a creak before three people entered and started to speak. Tick quickly closed the clock door and listened with care as he peered through the keyhole to see who was there. In walked the grown-ups who Tick had seen on the wall, followed by the little boy who was bouncing a ball. The grown-ups grabbed boxes and set up the stairs as the boy took a seat on one of the big kitchen chairs. With his ball on the table, he started looking around, while Tick held his breath, trying not to make a sound. When all of a sudden the ball rolled onto the floor and came to a rest by the clock's polished door. The boy wandered over and looked up at the tall clock. The door was firmly closed with no key in the lock. So he reached for the handle and opened the door wide, and little did he expect to find a frightened Tock inside. Tick froze on the spot, not knowing what to say. It was too late to hide or try and run away. The boy just stood and stared, for he'd never seen a Tock. I mean, he wasn't scared of Tick, but it had been quite a shock. He held out his little hand to politely offer a shake, and with a smile on his face said, "Hi, my name is Jake." Tick shook the boy's huge hand and, trying to hide his fear, said, "I don't like people, so please just leave me in here." But Jake was far too intrigued and asked the young Red Tock, "Well, tell me who you are first and why you're inside this clock." As the boy still held his hand, Tick felt he ought to reply. So he told the boy his name, how he'd moved in, and why. He explained that his previous home had been inside an old clock tower with beautiful stained glass windows and bells which rang every hour. He had lived with his mum and dad in their tower on the village green. His dad had taught him about clocks and what the different numbers mean. He had also learned how to fix the clock, as it often needed some loving care. Tick loved his family and their home, but one day they just weren't there. Tick had been out to the library on that fateful rainy day and had returned home to find that it had all been taken away. A bulldozer sat in the rubble where the old clock tower had stood. The beautiful windows were smashed and the clock hands lay buried in the mud. Tick had searched for his parents for days, but hadn't found any hints, so he looked for a place to hide and had lived in this clock since. Jake looked at the little Tock and slowly released his hand, before suddenly hugging Tick, which Tick really hadn't planned. Jake told him he wanted to help, as he felt very lonely too. But Tick wasn't so sure, so Jake shared what he'd been through. His mum had taken a job which was too good to turn down, so the family sold their house and moved to a whole new town. Jake had left his old school and said goodbye to his friends. His dad said that they could visit at holidays and weekends, but Jake felt very lonely, more than he had ever felt before. Tick understood that feeling, which made Tick like him more. He looked up at Jake's eyes and said, with a tiny grin, "I'm sure that we can be friends. Now, where should we begin?" As they got to know each other, Jake and Tick had a lot of fun. Both of them loved to read and both of them loved to run. Jake would run to the library with Tick in one of his pockets. They would read adventure books about cars or boats or rockets. And while they were at the library, they would also look for clues, as Tick's family loved reading, so it was a home that they might choose. Whenever they got the chance, they also checked every clock, but they didn't have any luck in finding a single Red Tock. And the start of school came closer as the summer drew to an end. Jake was nervous about going, but he was pleased he had a friend. And when the first morning arrived, and as he had said Tick could, Jake arrived at his new school with Tick hiding in his hood. As he walked into his new classroom, Jake looked for an empty chair. He found one next to a boy with a big smile and scruffy red hair. He looked a bit like Tick, but of course a great deal taller. He even had the same nose, though Tick's was a great deal smaller. The boy looked at Jake with a smile and said that his name was Ben. He said he was new to the school and asked if Jake would be his friend. Jake asked him if he liked books, and Ben said that he loved to read. Tick was sure Jake had a new friend and felt very happy indeed. So as the teacher started to talk, Tick saw a chance to explore. So he crept out of Jake's hood and slipped through a gap in the door. As he tiptoed along the hall, Tick noticed every door had a sign. As he read them, he heard laughing, especially in classroom number 9. The last room in the hall had pictures of books on the door. He pushed it open a little and saw shelves full of more. Tick was excited by the books and couldn't wait to read a few. But as he started to explore, something else came into view. At the other end of the room, standing proudly against the wall, was a beautiful grandfather clock, which was polished and very tall. As Tick was looking at the clock, he noticed that the door had no key. He wondered if it was locked and crept across the room to see. As he climbed up the base of the clock, Tick thought he heard voices inside. So he grabbed hold of the handle and swung the door open wide. Tick froze up on the spot and stared inside the clock. For what he found inside gave him a wonderful shock. Trying badly to hide in the corner were 2 small red balls of fur. And though he could barely see them, Tick knew exactly who they were. After all his tiring searching, after weeks of feeling lonely and sad, Tick let out an excited scream as he had found his mum and dad. Well, thanks for listening all the way through, and I hope you enjoyed it. I said, please do let me know what you think in the comments section below. Take care, and I will see you on my next video where I'll be talking about effective and fun use of green screen in video production. Until then, take care. Bye.